Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well. My name is Gregory Bloomfield, and you have joined the Motivation Moments podcast. I'm so glad that you're able to tune in, and I'm so glad that you can share this time with me tonight. I've looked at some data, and I know that we're reaching a lot of people. We're reaching folks in the United States, we're reaching people in Canada, we're reaching people in England, in South America, and even in South Africa. So people are watching this program. So I want to say hello to each and every one of you. And I'm so glad that you're a part of this evening and a part of this broadcast. I would love for you to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. And most importantly, subscribe. We want to grow our numbers and have you being notified of the program. And what we're doing is the Facebook, I believe the last time I checked was 36 subscribers, and YouTube was 44. My goal is to reach the mark of 50. We can do it, guys. We were just a little bit short. So what I am going to be doing, like I did last week, is if you subscribe today to either one of the platforms, Facebook or to YouTube, I'm going to send you a free copy. We'll do a draw, and I'll pick one person on the Facebook page and one person on the YouTube page who subscribed, and you'll get a free copy of autograph copy of this book, one of my number one books, Breaking the Silence, of which I was a co-author. As you can see my big old head on the back. All of these wonderful authors, we told our stories as how we overcame different issues in our lives. I wrote specifically about my battle with imposter syndrome, and many of you have suffered from that too. This gives you nuggets and tools on how you can be the best person, how you can unleash the power of your voice. So, one person, new subscriber on Facebook, one new subscriber on YouTube, and I will mail you out a free autograph copy of Breaking the Silence. Shout out to Dr. Paulette Harper for the curator of this wonderful project. Now, last week, I picked somebody and I contacted her who won a copy of You Say You Love Me. This is my latest book, You Say You Love Me, But Do You Respect Me? Makunda Clayton, I'm very happy to say that you won a copy of this. Your book will be in the mail. Thank you for supporting the podcast and the Motivational Moments movement. Say that 5 times fast. Anyway, thank you so much, Makunda, and congratulations in advance to the 2 winners. You'll be announced on next week's show. Now, I want to share something with you. As I mentioned last week, if you see some of the emails, and if you saw some of the stuff on Facebook, on YouTube, this month is Domestic and Intimate Partner Violence Awareness Month. Excuse me. So this whole month, we're having guests that have suffered from that situation, but have overcome it. And they are in a new space, and they're sharing their knowledge and their motivational stories with our audience at Motivation Moments. But I want to share a couple of things. On average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. During 1 year, this equates to more than 10 million women and men. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men, we're going to be talking about the men as well, experience severe intimate partner physical violence, sexual violence, or intimate partner stalking with impacts such as injury, fearfulness, and post-traumatic stress disorder. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. This includes a range of behaviors such as slapping, shoving, and pushing. And one other statistic, 1 in 7 women and 1 in 25 men have been injured by an intimate partner. This is something that is happening in our country. Think about it, 10 million people have experienced some sort of violence, whether physical, verbal, or all of the above, in their relationship or in their marriage. So we want to have the uncomfortable conversations and how we can um, give you skills and healing and hope for those who have been in the situations as I just described. Hey, good evening, Enya, and good evening, Regina. I really want you to really listen in. And some of you may be going through that situation right now. And I want to let you know that you are loved and you need to get out and you need to know that life is not over after such a horrible experience. You got to love yourself enough to get out of that. And I'm so happy to have my guest today, my first guest, who I haven't known that long, but I really think she's an amazing woman. And her name is Dr. Melissa Toney. Now, Dr. Toney, she describes herself as a servant leader, and she is the founder of the Serving with a Purpose nonprofit organization based out of Dallas, Texas, the team that whooped the New England Patriots today. But I digress. As you can tell, I'm a Patriots fan. One thing with Melissa is she's utilized her degree in business management to build her knowledge and understanding of how to successfully grow several businesses. She, unfortunately, has her story. Well, she has her story with domestic violence. She was a victim of that, and but it didn't stop her. She's here to share her experience and how she built a nonprofit to reach out to other young ladies who may be in a similar or worse situation. She is committed to serving with a purpose and she loves the Lord Jesus Christ. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you, first time on the podcast, and definitely won't be her last, my new friend, Dr. Melissa Toney. Hey,
Hey, how are you, Gregory?
I'm well. I'm well. I'm so happy that you were able to make it and share your story today. Um,
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
no problem. No problem. Let's just jump right into it.
Okay.
Um, let's start from the beginning. Um, Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay.
How did you meet the person that is, unfortunately did what they did to you? And we're sorry for that. But I want to give you a lot of time to talk and share and just roll. And I may ask a question here or there.
Absolutely. And thank you for that beautiful introduction. But my name is Dr. Melissa Toney. I am 41 years old. I have a 23-year-old daughter. So I've been a single mom for quite some time, and that's a whole nother journey by itself. I am the founder of Serving with a Purpose nonprofit organization. I call myself a jack of all trades because I wear a whole lot of hats. And not only that, I just have my hands in a lot of different entrepreneurial and business type businesses. So, yes, unfortunately, this topic is one that is tough. But I love something you said in the beginning before we get into the questions. Overcame. I don't call myself a domestic violence survivor. I'm an overcomer. And so thank you for that headline on that.
No problem. No problem. Awesome. Tell us a little bit more about how you were introduced to this situation of which you definitely overcame. Tell us
Yes,
your story.
sure thing. I know sometimes there are a lot of different variations of domestic and intimate violent relationships. And so mine actually started from a childhood friend. This was someone that I can say that I've known since about 14. And It was someone I trusted. It was kind of like a crush, when you're younger, and we played sports together. And so, when you're young, you can't really explore relationships. You don't even really know what relationships are, but you can't really explore relationships because you're too young and you're still under like the parental governance of it all. So, this was someone that I knew as a kid, and of course, life and time separated. And so it wasn't until I came back home from college that they reached out to my parents' house. I have, I'm the oldest of four. My parents were married. My dad just recently passed in November of this past year.
Our
And I had the
condolences.
parents that are going to keep the same number until you're old and gray. And
Mm,
so we literally had the same phone number, and he reached out to my parents' house. They had a landline, and I just so happened to be home that day from school. I had moved back home, and I answered the phone call that totally changed um, the whole direction of my life with that simple answer.
okay. Okay. So eventually you started dating, you had a relationship with this individual. And I know for like the movie What's Love Got to Do with It, with that was the biopic of the late Tina Turner. She when I saw the movie several times, frankly, the abusive situation between Ike and Tina didn't just start one day into the worst of the, like the hotel scene where she had to
Right.
go get a room and stuff. It was gradual. I remember a scene where Ike said something very hurtful and very abusive, frankly, verbally, to Tina. Was your journey kind of the same, where it was like it started off verbal, then it went on to worse and worse and worse? Is that, would you say it's common, or what would you say?
Oh, yes, for sure. I say all the time, no one's going to come in with an iron fist, right? It's kind of like a clickbait type thing. Um, Originally, he it more so started off kind of like verbal massages, right? I tell young girls that I mentor all the time, the idea of jealousy from your spouse, especially in a way that is like very aggressive and toxic, that's not love. It started with, I don't want you talking on the phone to this guy. And these were friends, or, I don't, why do you have to come home so late? Or why do you, so it was a lot of like conversational control of like, I'm doing these things because I love you. It started there. And then it kind of gradually moved into um, an emotional thing. So I'm an empath. One of my spiritual gifts is, and I've kind of learned, and I'll get a little bit more into that, of some things that I actually discovered in counseling. But my ability to be able to connect emotionally to people is very strong. And so I don't like people to be hurt. I definitely always want to make sure people are okay. I kind of learned through counseling too that like when I'm operating in my alter ego, which is not it's not how God created me to actually be. It's like my rescuer syndrome, right? So it was conversations of, you know, I'm hurt because you don't want to talk to me, or I need you, and things like that. And so I immediately started to connect to his conversations of how he was feeling, and it made me want to kind of give into that. And so after more of like the verbal, the emotional, the very first time I'll never forget, we were sitting in a car, and I was on the phone, and he called and he asked me why didn't I click over. And so, just me not thinking, I'm just like, I got a phone call, and I was going to call you back. And he said, were you on the phone with a guy? And so it caught me off guard, and I kind of laughed it off. Like, are you serious? Like, why would you ask me that? And he literally cocked his fist back and punched me in the face.
Oh my God.
And so I don't know if I first of all, was completely stunned because I couldn't believe that he did that. And so I think that strike was the moment that fear kicked in at like an all time high. Like I was literally petrified. at that moment. And so, of course, I began to weep, and he's like, I apologize. I didn't mean to do it. And, I just felt like you might have been talking to somebody else, and you know how much I love you. And
Mm.
so it just literally from that moment on, I think once he planted that fear inside of me, it literally blew up. After that, it just kind of trickled and got worse.
So you said that he struck you on the suspicion that you were talking with another guy, and obviously the fear and trepidation and the just terror of it is obvious.
Hmm.
The obvious question that a lot of people would ask, because I hear women and men say, "You hit me once, it's over. I'm out of here." And I see why someone would say that, but in this case, you stayed. And that's a walk me through the mindset of why you would stay in a situation after he did something that was just so unacceptable.
Well, first and foremost, and I'm gonna be really honest and transparent, Gregory, I was that person. I wish a man would was my conversation
Hmm.
before this happened to me. And I think the fear is paralyzing. Not only that, I had a daughter, right? And so now in my mind, well, first, let me say this. I'm the type of person, I've always been kind of hard on myself. And so I always replay situations to ask myself, Melissa, what could you have done different? Right. And in that situation, there's nothing I could have done different because you shouldn't have put your hands on me in the first place. But in my mind at the time, I'm like, okay, well, instead of you laughing, like that probably made him feel that you were, making a fool out of him or you were trying to be dishonest. So now I'm rationalizing with myself on how my behavior could have provoked his reaction. And
Oh,
how if I, did not do X, Y, and Z, then maybe this would not have happened. Not to mention, it coming from a two-parent household. I was extremely blessed. My parents were devoted Christians. I was raised in a very loving environment. Never saw my dad touch my mom in any inappropriate way, let alone even raise his voice in any type of aggressive way towards my mom or my sisters or my brother. And so that was foreign to me too. And so again in my mind, I'm like, okay, maybe I did something,
mm,
to make this person react like this. And then again, the fear of it all of if you would do this, kind of like what else are you capable of?
excuse me.
And so it kind of made me want to just do um be better and do better in the situation. Another thing that I kind of adopted, and I'll talk about this a little later too towards the tail end of this story, but a lot of our trauma is connected into tragedy, right? A lot of things that we don't resolve in ourselves, the insecurities, a lot of those things, Satan kind of plays on those things,
Yeah,
right? And I was able to discover so much through therapy that just kind of helped me see how I arrived in that space.
yeah. I think sometimes it's like you get hard on yourself because it's like you just said, you came from a two-parent home, loving environment, no demonstrations of abuse of any kind. And then it's like you're in this situation. It's like, what did I do wrong? I
Right.
failed. Maybe I provoked him. Even maybe I deserved it.
Yep.
Maybe I should
Yeah.
have clicked over on the
Yeah.
phone. Maybe when he said jump, I should have said how high, So
Yes.
I'm truly sorry that you experienced that, even though it was many years ago. And let me just stop and say I'm extremely, because I've read your bio, we've had conversations offline. I'm extremely proud of
Oh,
your
thank you.
overcoming of the situation. You truly are an inspiration. So,
Thank you.
what exactly was the aha moment? Like, where it's like, you know what? I'm gonna go back and use the Tina Turner and Ike Turner example.
Yeah.
When she had the white suit with the chocolates and Ike was doing his nonsense in the limo. And when Tina had enough and started fighting back and got the room for herself and said, I don't have any money. Me and my husband had a fight, but I promise you I'll pay you back. And that was the beginning of her exodus out of the abusive situation.
Yes,
Tell me, what was the light above your head to say, I get the hell up out of here. I'm done. Like, this man gonna kill me. And most importantly, I deserve better than this. When
absolutely.
did when did your exodus start? Or what was the trigger that made you get out of that situation for you and your daughter?
So, um, quite a few in between moments, right? Pushes, slaps. I mean, it continued from the very first punch in the car. Um, there was a time where he showed up at my house,
Mm,
and I lived in an apartment with my daughter, and he came over because he wanted to talk. I blocked his number, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm tired of this. The only person I was confiding in was my best friend, and she didn't even know what to do. And so, and I even asked her not to tell. And so he came over and he wanted to talk, and so I let him in. And I'm just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired. Well, he gets enraged, literally, and he grabs my keys and he walks out. And so I'm attempting to stop him, so I kind of chase him out of the apartment. And so we get to the back part of my apartments where it's kind of like a dark area. And I try to grab the keys from him, and he literally takes the keys and my arm and he drags me through the breezeway in the apartments. And so I'm muddy, and he goes in my house and he locks the door. My daughter's inside, she's asleep. She may have been probably about 5 at the time. And I'm beating on the door because now I'm scared. You're in the house with my kid, and I'm outside. And so I'm bamming on the door and I'm crying. And so he finally lets me in and he barges past me and he gets in my car and he leaves. So I'm weeping, I'm crying. I call the police. And so he calls and he says, I know you probably called the police, and it's in your best interest that you call them and tell them that your car is back. So I called the police, and out of, again, fear, that big F word, I tell the police my car is back, everything's fine. I just miscommunication, and I didn't know he took the car, and, but he's back. And so he brings me my keys back. Well, that was the moment where I felt like I had to get out. Like, this is getting too bad. I am super scared. And so I literally broke my lease. The next day, I called my mom without telling her what was going on. I was just like, hey, mom, I really need to move home. And she was kind of taken back by it. She was like, okay, my the parents type of parents where if you got to come home, you got to come home. And I'm
mhm.
like, I just really need to kind of get some things together. Can I move home? And so my mom's like, of course. So I literally had two friends to help me pack my apartment up, and I moved home literally in a couple of days. I set up an arrangement with my apartments to pay that off, and I left. And so that was the moment that started my breakaway. Unfortunately for me, it did not end there because that was kind of like I poured gasoline on the fire with that move.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I a little after that, I found out that I was pregnant,
Mm.
and it was in that moment that a whole new chord struck of emotions and just all the things. And I decided that I was not going to keep that baby, unfortunately, against my beliefs and what my heart desired. Just with the abuse that I was had experienced so far, and just how it could affect my daughter and just my family as a whole. Um, I just wanted to get away from it, and so I chose not to keep the baby, and that was the second set of gasoline that I poured on the fire. And so for about 6 months, right, he was calling and I'm a murderer and all these things, and he's blocked. And I mean, like, unfortunately, people know where you live nowadays. And so
Yeah.
he knew where my parents stayed. And May the 29th of 2010, which was 6 months after I moved, I left home that day to go get something to eat. My daughter was in the bed. I was still staying at home with my parents. And I get out of the car to come back in the house with my food and my purse and my keys in my hand. And when I make it to the sidewalk, he literally comes from out of nowhere. It's about 11 o'clock at night. And so he scared me because I wasn't looking up when I walked around the corner. I was kind of looking down at my stuff. And so I kind of grabbed my chest and I'm like, oh my goodness, you scared me. And that was literally the last thing that was said and that I remembered. He drew his hand back and he swung. And when he did that, he slit my throat. So I have a scar that goes from this side to this
Oh,
side. And I had to receive 17 stitches. So he literally begins, I fall to the floor. He starts punching and kicking me, and he stabbed me in my left arm. And he forces me back into my car. And so he makes me climb over the driver's seat. I get in the passenger seat and we're driving. And then he goes semi down the street. And so I had on a white t shirt at the time. And so I looked down at my t shirt and it's drenched in blood. And so I'm panicking at this point because I'm trying to figure out where is this blood coming from. And so he looks over at me and it's like he literally snapped out of it, whatever he was in. And so he's just like, oh my God, what do you want me to do? And so I just said, take me to the hospital. And so he took me to the hospital and he left me there. And so I sat in there.
what do you want me to do? Like, dude, huh? What do you?
Yeah, he
That's a
left me
that's a
there.
demon.
Yeah, he called. It was someone in the parking lot, and he just told them like she needs, help, and he left on foot. And so they go in and they get the nurses, and I'm rushed to the back, and that was the last of the last. But that whole torture kind of getaway thing went on for about 6 months.
Your parents must have been, and you said you're the eldest of four. Is all
Mhm.
girls, or I know you have one sister, but are they all girls, or you have a brother?
I have two sisters, and my brother is the youngest.
You're now at motivation moments. We tend to be politically correct. I'm not going to be politically correct today. I have a daughter. She's 14. She's the love of my life. I love her. If any man were to ever do something like that to my daughter, I'm a man of God, but I'm also a man, a father. I would not rest. I have to be careful because I don't want to get flagged. But I would not rest till I find them and there's no talking.
Yeah.
And I got friends, right? I'm a gentleman until I don't need to be anymore.
Right.
And I don't talk, I don't converse.
Yeah.
It's just hands. For real, for real. Like I just don't get fooled by this Canadian that I'm all gentle and stuff. There's a little bit of thug in me if I need to. Don't let the tie fool you. But anyway, I'm not Drake. So what I'm saying is that your family must have been hurt, scared, vehemently angry. Talk to me about your family, and is this nasty human being in jail? What's going on?
So um this is the part where people cringe, right? Whenever I've spoken on many domestic violence panels, and this is the part where people are just like, really? Um, my parents, my family did not know the specifics of what happened to me for 6 years. When I was taken to the emergency room that night, the police were called, and my best friend, I called her. And so they asked me, I had to be interviewed, and um, I literally made up a story on the spot. I told them that I was in a car accident and that I was laying on the seatbelt and that the seatbelt cut my neck. And so, they asked a lot of questions that it didn't make sense, right? Especially to a police officer.
Right.
And he even I actually was re-victimized by the police, in my opinion, because I will never forget that officer told me, "Up seatbelt didn't do this. Somebody did this to you. And if I find out that you're lying to me, I'm gonna prosecute you myself." And so, for someone who just experienced that type of violation, for you to then say, even if you know it, for you to say to me that in my moment of fear and not wanting to say what happened, that you would then turn around and try to prosecute me for that in that moment, that just, oh, it really made me want to be quiet. And so I'll never forget, I came home that morning about 6, and blood was all, it was everywhere in my car. And so
Mm.
I waited until the detail place opened up down the street from my house. I went and got my car detailed, and I remember the guy was just like, "What the heck happened in here?" And I was just like, "I had an accident." And he was just like, "Okay." And so I drive home, and of course my neck is bandaged up. And I get home, and I'm like, my mom's like, "What's wrong with you? What happened?" And so I told her the same story that I told the police, and she was like, "Well, why didn't you call us? Why would you go to the emergency room with something like that and not call and say anything?" And so that that is basically the story that my family believed for 6 years. It wasn't until my daughter got baptized on the same day that that happened to me 6 years later, um, that I took my parents to a restaurant and to tell them the truth. That was actually the first time I've ever seen my dad cry. And I was tired, because you can just imagine how to hold that for 6 years.
Yeah.
I was suffering in silence with dealing with that type of abuse and not knowing what to do with it. And so, um, yeah, that's the story that they believe I didn't tell anyone. Um,
I'm so sorry. But I can understand why you wouldn't say anything. There are two things listening to your story. Um, it goes again, shows not to bring race into this, but a lot of times, the whole thing when black children, particularly girls, go missing, that never makes the news. It's the same thing when black women are abused. They don't get the same compassion as our non-melanated friends and family. And your experience, again, shows that to be true, and why we need to bring more awareness to things like this. Um,
Absolutely. And not only that, I mean, I remember again speaking on a panel, and someone asked me, how could the church do better in a space? Sometimes that
excuse
upbringing
me. Excuse me.
is a blessing and a curse, right? Because
Yeah.
it's just some things that you believe as a Christian and as a believer, like, this is just not supposed to happen. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, this is embarrassing to my family, and to have to get in court and talk about an abortion, to have to get in court and talk about abuse, like, this just does not happen to us. And so there's no way that I can allow all this truth of what really happened to come out. So it was just, that was a lot of what I was feeling, and why I held on to that so long, is just because I didn't want to embarrass my parents. I didn't want to embarrass myself. I didn't want to, if he would be so bold to attack me. And to this day, I still cannot understand. My parents live off a main street. Not one car came down that street. And someone asked me, did you yell? I don't. You would have to be in a very like traumatic situation like that. I don't even think I screamed. Like I can't remember, but like my mom and my dad said at the time, like they didn't hear anything, and their bedroom window was in the front of the house. So it was just, if someone is capable of that, like what else would you do? Like,
Yeah.
would you come and try to kill my parents or my siblings or my daughter? Like it was, man, it was a lot of thoughts and emotions.
And I think that's what people don't understand when you're abused is that when you're in an abusive situation, logic goes out the window. Because, yeah,
Hmm.
if someone's attacking you, you would scream, you would holler, you'd fight back. But when you're taken by surprise and when all those things happen, logic is gone.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, and I this is one of the last things I want to say because I want to talk about the overcoming part, right? Because we could spend a whole hour talking about the tragedy, but I want to talk
Right.
about the triumph. We One of the things that we can't do in people who are going through abuse, man or woman, is to start blaming the victim. Well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? What Logic goes out the window. You
Yes.
are in trauma. You are in a situation where you're questioning yourself. You were taken by surprise. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. Monday morning quarterback does not have any role. And in fact, I would dare say it's extremely insensitive to
Yeah.
say things like that to a victim. So, people who are watching today, if you know someone who's going through an abusive situation, whether it's a child, whether it's a woman, whether it's a man, please don't victim shame. Don't use your logic. Well, I would have done this. Like, you don't know what you would have done. And, please don't do that. That's the first thing. But Dr. Toney, I want to talk about your triumph. I want to talk about your overcoming and what that looked like and where you are today. Again, I'm totally empathetic and sympathetic and sorry for what you went through. But I praise the Lord that, first of all, you're alive. Second of all, that you're alive to tell your story and you're doing amazing things for the kingdom and to the glory of God and to help other women. So let's talk about that
Thank
part.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So the first thing that I had to do, since it kind of derived off of a lie, is I had to first admit to myself that this happened to me. Like, and to know that that was okay. I had to admit that I was powerless in that situation. I think being the oldest of four, I've always been like, the example, the
Mm-hmm.
one to do things first and be strong and, all these things. And they're not a bad thing. But I think to be in a situation where I felt like I had no power, I felt like I didn't have that span of control, um, that was really hard for me. And so that was the first step for me, admitting that this happened to me, and then, you know, making my wrongs right with having those conversations with my family about what actually happened. I think after that is where I was having a conversation with a friend, and I then began to explore counseling. Um, I actually attempted twice. The first time I went, I think it was a little too soon, because I think digging into that trauma and what happened just kind of scared me and drove me backwards. And so it was probably about 3 or 4 years later, afterwards, I attempted it again, and it was life changing for me,
Amen.
completely life changing. I was able to really kind of dig into a lot of whys. I think that um, through counseling, I was able to discover a lot of my strengths, a lot of my weaknesses. That's another thing when we don't understand, again, our insecurities and traumas and different things, they're like, it's like a playbook. Like Satan uses those things to really will us in and put us in very vulnerable and bad situations. And so it was through counseling that I learned, you know, overcompensating in relationships is something that I've always struggled with. People pleasing is something that I struggle with. All of these things that I kind of discovered in myself through therapy really like empowered me. It gave me like a space to know, like, okay, Satan, you can't use this no more, not through a man, not through a woman, not through anybody. And so it wasn't until I kind of got on that journey of therapy, in which, oh man, in any with anybody that has ever been in any situation, especially a situation of abuse, that is definitely the best step. One of the biggest mistakes I made was, and I'm not going to say a mistake, but I lost a friendship because of that happening. I think that it put a very big strain on my best friend and I's relationship because she was the only person that knew and she had to carry that weight. And
Yeah.
then she didn't know what to do, right? And so I think going to counseling, I mean, they are trained professionals that can
Right.
help you unpack that thing and really navigate the whys, because there is a bigger thing in allowing abuse. Yes, there's fear, but some of that stuff is other things that we're dealing with, and that it just feeds off of it. And so going to therapy and getting down to the root cause of a lot of that is really important.
I totally agree. I mean, therapy for dealing with abuse, therapy for dealing with a divorce or any type
Yes.
of loss, or just because, in the spirit of full disclosure, I had a therapist who transitioned to being a life coach for three, 3.5 years. Yeah. So when I went through my divorce, and there was some, you know, stuff in it that I'll talk about later in this month. Um, I had to learn how to. Let me say this: therapy was the best thing that I ever did, and
Hmm.
I am a huge, huge proponent of therapy. Not your best friend. Hey, not even your pastor, because
Yeah,
not all pastors are therapists,
they're not.
right? And more pastors need to admit that they're not.
Right. And just to kind of piggyback on that,
Yeah,
and that's kind of like what I am. I am literally in school again. This, I promise, this is my last degree. I'm not going back to school to get any more degrees.
she's
But I'm
really smart,
currently
y'all.
getting
She's really smart.
a master's in as a licensed professional therapist. That also inspired me to really go back. I've always been drawn to people. Like I said, being an empath is definitely a gift. But I've also been drawn to people, drawn to really helping people to kind of break down like a lot of the things that they're dealing with. And so um, not functioning in my rescuer capacity, but functioning in my healing capacity when it comes to therapy is definitely a gift that God has given me. And so I got about a year left in school, but it definitely inspired me to go back so that I too can give to someone else, not just in domestic violence, but just holistically to
Yeah.
someone else from a therapy and counseling perspective.
Well, me personally, and the Motivation Moments podcast family, we definitely support you on
Thank
that journey,
you.
because you're doing amazing work.
Thank you.
Um, and you're gonna help somebody else who's going through something similar. Now let's
Thank
talk
you.
about that. Now you
Okay.
have a nonprofit organization.
Hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that, and some of the wins that you have accumulated through the non for profit, which obviously was inspired and birthed through the overcoming of your domestic abuse situation.
Yes. So serving with a purpose, I'm gonna tell you, I started serving with a purpose in 2011, right? And so I was doing a lot. I was literally serving with all kind of purpose and not really with a very drilled down purpose. It started off, I was serving single moms, and really kind of tailoring my serving single moms with resources and things like that. And then, of course, kind of ministering to some moms that were experiencing abuse the way that I experienced it. It wasn't until that my career path kind of maneuvered and switched around. I was a kindergarten teacher for a few years. And so I had a chance to see the needs of kids up close and personal in a different way. And
Hmm.
so I actually birthed resource centers through my nonprofit organization. Um,
Excuse me.
Full encumbrance resource centers where we offer um, tangible resources, shoes, clothes. It's literally like a physical transformed classroom. It sits in a school or in a district. And so these resources are immediately accessible to students, and their families can shop in the space as well. And then we do have intangible components of my resource centers that we offer schools and districts, with a lot of partners that come alongside of us that offer like life skill development, counseling, professional development, mentoring. It's just an array of different classes. But also, I do still hold that domestic violence piece. I do also partner with a lot of like police departments in different places where my resource centers are housed, where we do have little centers set up for them on these campuses where they can come in, get resources for moms, men or women, because right, women are just the only ones that are abusing relationships, where they can get it and take it, and then we can get them additional resources later. So I still kept that domestic violence piece. However, as an educator, I come from a family of educators. My heart quickly gravitated, or it's always gravitated towards the needs of kids, but we kind of streamline my organization to build these centers inside of schools and districts. So I'm extremely excited about that. We currently have a center in DeSoto ISD, Dallas ISD, and I just expanded into Monroe, Louisiana. So
Oh
extremely
wow.
excited about all the amazing things God is doing and how He's using me, and just all the things that I've endured and gone through and overcame, as well as just, my gifts, just the gifts that He's given me to be able to touch kids and people in general.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, Dr. Kusamo, if you could keep the website up, please, because I want everybody to know about the website, to know about Dr. Tony's story. And also, if you, it's a nonprofit, y'all. So if you want to donate to her cause, and champion her cause, please, with the Motivation Moments family, if you'd like to give a donation, there's the website right there. Zelle and Cash App is a way that you can give to servingwithapurpose.org. So let's support her and the work that she's doing. It's important work. It's coming from her heart. She's an empath, y'all. So that means she cares. So let's do our best to support her this evening. Um, Final question for you.
Sure.
You know, the scripture says, I believe it's in Romans 8:28. It says, all things work together for good who love the Lord and are called
Absolutely.
according to his purpose. Obviously, what you went through was not good, to say the least. Um, but would you find that that scripture really applies to your life? If you like, you're looking back at what you've been through, and it was horrible, it was horrific, it was dangerous, it was just bad. But sometimes when we go through really bad things, we can say, I praise God I went through it because it's made me a stronger person. It's made put me in this place right now that I have this platform and I can champion because I've experienced it. Is that, tell me if that's how you feel, if that's not how you feel, if is it am I way off?
Oh
um
my God, you are bullseye on. No, that is so how I feel. I think just getting older in wisdom, and then of course my relationship with the Lord, my life is not mine. And so, yes, we can definitely make decisions to put ourselves in some very tough situations, but I so resonate with that scripture, because even in those times, he still brings it around full circle, and it still works for our good. And so I could have lost my life on May 29th of 2010, but God allowed me to live past that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So that first, it's a testament of his goodness and his mercy and his grace, first of all. And then second of all, my voice not being silent is going to help someone else that is sitting where I was sitting and
Yes.
enduring what I had to endure. And so I truly believe that that it's any situation that God allows us to experience and to overcome, that he uses it for something way bigger than ourselves. And
Yeah.
so I've met quite a few people. I just did an empowerment conference last weekend in Monroe, and I met a young lady, and I'm excited in the car line, and making sure parents are coming to the conference. And a young lady pulls up to pick her daughter up with a black eye. And she's just like, yeah, after we talked about, what's that about? Yeah, my boyfriend blacks my eye because, he doesn't want anyone looking at me. And so I was mortified. And so again, God putting me in the path of someone else to say, you know, first of all, that's not it. And to build a relationship with this young lady, to say, there's something deeper here, and let me tell you what can happen,
Yes.
right? And so that comes from a place of experience, that comes from a place of, again, God's goodness and grace and mercy, that he allowed me to live to be able to say that to the next person. So for
Yes.
sure, I definitely think they all work together.
It's funny that you say that, is that all of us have some sort of scars, whether they're physical or emotional or whatever. But one of the things that my boy in my church said in his sermon, which has stuck to me to this day, is that when you have scars in your life and they're healed, it's a reminder to us that God is in the healing business. The
Absolutely.
scars you still have, like I have but this is no way in comparison, but I have an old basketball injury. I used to play basketball in high school and college in different leagues. And I have two screws in my left wrist because I was playing defense and I tripped and I landed on this wrist and it was like hanging like that. So they had to put two
Wow.
screws in here and they had to first open it up and then put the screws in. And I still have the mark right here in my wrist. And it's just a reminder that God is a healer.
Absolutely.
And your scars, and one person even said, your scars are beautiful. You know, your scars are beautiful. All of our scars in here are beautiful. Our stories need to be told because someone needs to be inspired and know that there is a way out. There is hope after
It's
this.
so real. Yes.
And your scars have a purpose to save somebody else. So
Yes.
thank you so much for your courage. Thank you much for your story. And I know, and someone put this in the chat, if you were blessed, whether on YouTube or Facebook, if you were blessed, say, just type the word blessed. Just type the word blessed. If this story, if this testimony inspired you, and you're going to take this and share this with other people. Dr. Melissa Toney, thank you so much for being a part of the Motivation Moments family.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. And listen, announcement for the audience is this. Check this out. If you want to hear more of Melissa Toney, I know I do, circle this date in your calendar. Thursday, October the 19th. We are going to be having, with all of our female guests this month, we're going to be having a special, hold it, a bonus show on Thursday. So we're going to have shows on Sunday, and we're going to have a panel discussion on Sunday with Dr. Toney and other amazing guests, of which you will see on each of the Sunday programs. The topic, it's going to be a ladies panel, all ladies. So I'm going to drop out, and Dr. Alonda is going to be curating and being the lead panelist for this topic. And the topic is, how do you spot a narcissist? So, we're going to be talking about how to avoid dating a narcissist. And if you are with a narcissist, how you can get out. You need to get out. In the name of Jesus, run, Forrest, run. So, yeah, so I want you to circle that date. So please subscribe. You got to subscribe so you know when you get the notifications. But please circle October the 19th. More information will be coming. I believe it's going to be 7:30 to 9. So it's going to be an hour and a half. So because when you have about 5 or 6 people on there, you know that you can't do it in an hour. We could barely do this in an hour.
Right.
So listen, everybody. This was Thursday, October the 19th. The 19th. Got that. All right. So please subscribe either to Facebook or YouTube. And I'll pick someone from Facebook and I'll pick someone from YouTube to get a free copy, autographed copy of Breaking the Silence. Any other of my books, you can get them on sisterpamelapublishing.com. Please support. The sale of books helps support this show. If you want to give a cash app, you can as well. But tonight, I want you to give your seeds to servewithapurpose.org. We're going to put that website back up again and the cash app and Zelle information. Let's bless Melissa and her organization. Special from the Motivation Moments podcast family. So thank you again, Melissa. This was an incredible evening.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again soon on the 19th.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Gregory.
No problem. Good night, everybody. And remember, be encouraged, be inspired, and be motivated. This is Motivation Moments with your boy. Have a wonderful night. God bless you.